It's my pleasure to welcome back Khalid Abu Tuama, the Jerusalem Post Palestinian affairs correspondent, who will moderate a panel called The Israel-UAE Deal and Its Consequences for a Changing Middle East.
Dr. Nimrod Novik was the senior policy advisor to Prime Minister Shimon Peres and a special ambassador of the State of Israel. He is a member of the board of Commander for Israel Security and the Israel Fellow of the Israel Policy Forum. And we also have with us Dr. Ibtissam El-Kitbeh, president of the Abu Dhabi-based Emirates Policy Center. Thank you to both of you for joining us. I will start with Dr. Novik. Can you tell us, what role did you play in this recent normalization agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates or other Arab countries? I understand that you have been very active in this field in promoting normalization between Israel and some Arab countries, and it's not new. It's been happening for a long time now. So can you please tell us about your role?
Thank you. I am a private citizen. So I play no role in official channels, but as a private citizen with a background in a struggle to expand the peace circle in our region, primarily with the Palestinians, but not only, I have never left the scene, but in a very private role, one that does not bind my government or anybody else. We have groups of individuals with such experience. We communicate with friends and colleagues across the region, as well as in Washington, in the European capitals, at the UN. But this is all what is called track 2, which means individuals striving for a common goal, trying to educate each other how it can be best achieved, but it has nothing to do with the accomplishment. The accomplishments are all exclusively of the governments.
In your opinion, what is the potential for this bilateral agreement that was reached between Israel and first the United Arab Emirates and later Bahrain?
The potential is enormous, and it is on more than one level. Obviously, in the bilateral relations between ourselves and primarily the United Arab Emirates, more so than Bahrain, you have here the two leading countries in the region that are driven by science and technology and by pursuit of stability, as opposed to some other players in the region that thrive on generating instability. So I think that we Israelis have a lot to gain from cooperation with counterparts in the United Arab Emirates on a variety of fields. Now, most Israelis are excited about the opportunity to travel. You know, usually you want to travel to a place where you're not allowed to. So we were not allowed to travel to the UAE for decades, and now we are. So people are excited about that. So tourism is important. Mutual tourism is important. The human contact between our people and theirs is important. But also in a maybe more profound way, cooperation in science, technology, in understanding each other's strategic objectives, in seeing how we can contribute to each other's security objectives, especially those objectives that are in common. All this is ahead of us, and I hope will materialize. But there's another layer that personally is even more important to me, and that is, can Israel be smart enough and wise enough in order to mobilize the support of the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and others who may come soon in order to help us move forward in resolving our conflict with the Palestinians?
Well, in this regard, maybe we should ask Dr. El-Kitbeh. Dr. El-Kitbeh, what is your response? I mean, do you think the United Arab Emirates can play a role, can help Israel in promoting relations with the Palestinians, for example?
Why not? Why not? The UAE I think, facilitating the involvement of and integration of the Israel to the region, it is be a cause for introspection and reflection in Israel about ending the settlement, occupation for Palestinian territories. This will surely enhance building of mutual interest and confidence between Israel and the Arab world, and of course, trying to avoid the implementation of peace pledges and ending the occupation under the pretext of weak Palestinian presence due to the global shift and other objective reason does not eventually serve the cause of the de-escalation and resolution of conflicts, the creation of platform for collective cooperation that can support development and the prosperity of the region, and of course, the Palestinian issue.
Yeah, do you think the United Arab Emirates can act as a mediator between Israel and the Palestinians, for example, or other Arab countries?
And I'm always saying, when I've been asked, UAE still sees an opportunity in UAE-Israeli treaty to revive the peace process between Palestinian and Israeli. So it's not a mediator. I'm always saying the ball is on the ground of the Palestinian. If they want to grab a chance, and if they want to take this opportunity, strategic opportunity, to cooperate with UAE to find a solution. And this needs, in my opinion, a new leadership, a new young leadership. Okay, those who really cares for peace, cares for their people, not cares for staying long life on their chairs as if it is a monarchy.
Yeah, I would like to ask Dr. Novik, how do you see the Palestinian reactions? I mean, we see that the Palestinians are very angry, they're very upset, they're accusing the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain of stabbing the Palestinians in the back. They're accusing them of betraying the Palestinian issue, and even Al-Aqsa Mosque. Very serious allegations we are hearing. How do you see this, playing out? What is going to happen with the Palestinians now, with Israel, especially with Israel, in their relations with Israel?
It's a very important question. It's a very sad moment. On the one hand, I can feel some sympathy for the Palestinians who feel that their expectation that the Arab world will wait for them forever are not met. In 2002, the Arab world issued the Arab Peace Initiative. It's been 18 years. I'm not saying that the Palestinians alone are to blame for lack of progress. As an Israeli, I ask more of my government than of any government in the world. My government is responsible to me, and therefore I demand more of my government. But the Palestinians have their share in the fact that it hasn't happened since. And if major players in the Arab world reach the conclusion that they will continue to support the Palestinian cause, but they're not going to remain hostage to this issue in pursuing their national interests, I would have expected the Palestinians, however disappointed, to have a more sober approach, which says basically, we don't like it, it's going to happen anyway, so how can we work with it rather than against it? Because working against it is hopeless.
I would like to ask
as an Israeli, this is very sad for me because it is not the Emiratis, nor the Bahrainis, nor others that will come, not certainly Washington, that is stuck in a conflict with the Palestinians.
Yes, I would like to ask Dr. El-Kitbi about the Palestinian charges against the United Arab Emirates. How have people in the United Arab Emirates received these allegations. I mean, we see very strong reactions from people in the Gulf accusing the Palestinians of being ungrateful, making very serious charges against Palestinian leadership. We see an emerging crisis between the people in the Gulf and the Palestinians. Where does all this anger come from?
Well, Samuel, I would say, I am a political analyst, and I like to analyze things from this logic. Accusing UAE of betrayal by the Palestinian National Authority is an irrational accusation, and not based on the logic of strategic analysis of the Eastern landscape. If we apply the what-if methodology, we will realize that the lack of normalization of relation between Israel and Arab countries over the past decades has not moved the Palestinian-Israeli peace process forward and has not achieved any gains for Palestinians. Normalization between the UAE and Israel might move this process forward, and at worst, things will remain the same. The deadlock in regional relations has not led to any gains for anyone. Therefore, UAE has decided to think out of the box and hoping that the region might move towards peace and prosperity. Now, condemning, get anger, did not help the Palestinians at all, okay? What will help them to come out of the box, take the opportunity, bring a solution, but will not take them anywhere. In fact, it caused more anger from the Gulfists. The statements came from Hamas or from Abbas himself, looking down to the Gulfists that they are ignorant. Does not help the Palestinian. And again, I'm saying I am caring for Palestinian people. We don't care for this leadership.
Okay, so Dr. Nimrod Novik, do you think change of Palestinian leadership will solve the problem? It will help us move forward, or is it become a cultural issue? Is it much deeper than we think? The issue of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
You know, I'm old enough to remember quite a few times that we Israelis presumed to decide who will be the coach of the other team, who will be the leader. I remember when my prime minister signed a peace treaty with the Lebanese president that we crowned, and he didn't last for 24 hours. I still remember attempts by other Israeli leaders to decide who would be the leaders of the Palestinians. I don't think that we should stick our nose into this issue. I think that our responsibility is to make sure that the new regional opportunities are not a bypass to the Palestinian issue, but a bridge to solving it. And I'm more concerned with an Israeli policy that will strengthen the Palestinian moderate leadership in the West Bank and not weaken it and strengthen Hamas in Gaza. So I think a change of priorities of the Israeli government using this regional opportunity is called for.
Okay, I would like to ask Dr. Al-Kitbi, do you agree that this is what is needed right now?
Absolutely. I do agree. I think this region, it's full of a crisis, full of a blood, and needs to breathe, needs to another concept of cooperation, need to abandon that rhetoric.
Okay, can I ask you, are you planning on visiting Israel soon?
I'm not planning, but if I got a chance, I will visit Israel.
Maybe Dr. Novik, also a final question. When are we going to see you in the United Arab Emirates? Well, I'm among the few fortunate Israelis who've been there in the past more than once. In my previous capacity, when I was accompanying Shimon Peres and others, in other contexts, but I'm certainly looking forward to welcoming Dr. Ebtisham in my home and to visit her in her institute.
I would like to thank Dr. Nimrod Novik and Dr. Ebtisham El-Kitbi from Abu Dhabi. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.